I feel I was denied critical, need-to-know information.
We can't stop here. This is bad country.
Dude, check the news. It doesn't matter what channel.
Damn, we're in a tight spot.
If you feel it. It's the wonder of nature, baby!
Yes, we'll reel around the flag, boys will reel it once again, shouting the battle cry of freedom. We will reel it from the hillside, all together from the plain, shouting the battle cry of freedom. The union forever, hurrah, boys, hurrah! Down with the traitors, up with the stars. We will reel around the flag, boys, and reel it once again, shouting the battle cry of freedom.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this edition of Uncut History. I want to state, I was on time. I was here at least 7 minutes before we started rolling, getting all the links set up for tonight's fun. And I just couldn't get the tabs together properly. Darn, do I hate StreamYard sometimes. Like, I have a couple of different windows open for tonight's presentation, but every time I would go through, it wasn't all appearing. There were just tabs that were there. I had them open, but not according to StreamYards. And then when I'd go and rearrange them, then other tabs were not connecting with StreamYards. And this went on past 7:30, past the 7:35 before I got it together. I know some people have been jumping ship over the restream, but I think there's just going to be problems regardless what platform you use, whatever software we use. How's everybody doing tonight? Sorry about my I can't speak. Angry intro. It's another week here on Readout Productions, which means it's another live stream of Uncut History. And look, I actually got a subject matter with like notes and facts. Oh, it's like the old days here on the stream. I haven't done that in a while because my life's been inhaled by college, work, and a whole bunch of other hoopananny stuff in between. And I'm not going to really delay too long. So I got to go and share the screen and hopefully share the gosh darn screen correctly this time. Every time I try to do it, it just goes wrong. Is this what we want? I think this is what we want. I believe, I strongly believe this is what we need. So, yeah, it's okay. Let's just start the live. There we are. Perfect. So what we're going to talk about tonight is CNO number 614. This is a steam locomotive that is going to get restored, which is something I was not expecting to hear in 2024. There's been a long line of steam locomotives that are getting a second lease on life in 2024 for all the craziness that's been happening. This is like one of the few good spots. And I just realized I'm sharing this wrong. It has been, like I said, I've been having severe problems with StreamYards. It's so freaking confusing. Okay, I got to share it like a slide. Yes, go. Yes, I have allowed you, Google Slides, have access for 2 years now. Yes. The 4 services Streamer has access to. Yes, it's me giving you access over and over to the same thing. Oh boy. StreamYards. You and me, we're gonna go in the dark alley after I'm done streaming tonight. I'm gonna. Actually, you're probably gonna beat me up more. Tends to be what happens. Oh, I'm okay. Okay, are we there? Okay, thank God, I got the slideshow up, and it's just really just to show you some nice images, so you don't have to look at my ugly grill when we do the streams. I want to show you some images of what we're talking about. There's no real facts on it, just lovely, beautiful images of a steam locomotive. That's what I want to show you. Okay, let's take that from the top. Tonight, we're going to be talking about Chesapeake and Ohio number 614. This is oh man, my brain. This is a 484 of, depending on what you want to call it, a northern. In this case, it's a Greenbrier because it's Chesapeake and Ohio. This is a 484 Greenbrier locomotive that has quite the legacy in terms of excursion operations across the United States. And just last week, we got an announcement that it's going to be restored, which is something I was not expecting to hear this year. But 2024 has had a lot of surprises for the railroad community. New York Central 3001 is going to get restored, which is something I don't think anybody was anticipating. The Fort Wayne Railroad Historical Society, they're the ones that are going to be undertaking that massive restoration. One of the last surviving New York Central. I think it's the largest New York Central locomotive around. Great progress been made involving the construction of a brand new T1 locomotive of the Pennsylvania Railroad, the T1 Trust. We covered that on an episode of Retracing History, as well as great strides being made on getting the K4 Pennsylvania Railroad number 1361 back in operation. And SMS lines out in southern New Jersey, they were supposed to run excursions. I think they were supposed to be the maiden excursions, public excursions with number 9, a steam locomotive they've been restoring for the past 14 years. They had to kind of sideline those plans due to the severe drought that's impacted the Mid-Atlantic region, but they still had it on hand for the public to see. So that's a great success story. A lot of good stories about steam locomotives coming back to life just in 2024 alone. We're on their way. And this one's another one to add to those chapters. Not one I was expecting. I thought we were done with all these surprises this year, but hey, I'll keep taking them. This is good news. So what is a 614? What is the 614, I should say? Well, Chesapeake and Ohio 614 is a Greenbrier class locomotive, which in turn is a northern style locomotive, which there's like a dozen different names on what a northern actually is. What all these names are referring to is the 484 wheel arrangement. And I don't think you really can see that in the photograph. Let's see. This one gives you a better idea. 484. So all steam locomotives, your basic components, they can be named after their wheel configurations. Like the ones you see in a classic Western, those would typically be 440s, nicknamed the American style locomotive. This is a 484 because you can see here we have 2, and then of course on the left side we have 2 more, which gives you 4 running wheels, and then you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 8 driver wheels, and then of course we got down here 1, 2 on the other side, 3, 4, 4 trailing wheels. So you got your runners, you got your drivers, and you got your trailers. That's what those different number configurations are referring to. As steam locomotives evolved from the 19th into the 20th century, of course, they were getting bigger and bigger as railroads and locomotive designers were trying to find what would be the ultimate design that gives you the most speed, the most power, but is also, maybe not the heaviest on the rails, so it doesn't bust the rails and can be used in the widest range of different lines. So you're looking for the best wheel configuration to facilitate massive firebox, which gives you massive boiler, which gives you massive steam power, but also ain't going to break the bank. A lot of people agree that the northern style, the 484 that you see photographed here, was the best wheel arrangement for both power and for speed and for overall reliance. It's called a northern because in the late 1920s, the Northern Pacific Railroad experimented with the 484 wheel arrangement and then found it was a great balance, allowed them to have a very large firebox as well as a wider grate. And that meant they can burn more low-grade coal from their own mines, no less, that they also owned. So they can burn not really grade coal, but in a much larger quantity, which allowed them to still boil the water in a massive boiler and get all that extra steam power. And the reason you couldn't just do like a 480, which those did exist, the reason you want those trailing wheels underneath the cab is for better stability. You'll get a lot of your switchers. Actually, the number 9 I mentioned about, the SMS lines number 9, is an 060 that was initially built for the U.S. Army during the Second World War. And it was utilitarian. It did not ride comfortably, and it mainly after the war saw switcher duties. So you would have found it moving cars around to build trains up in a large yard, where this is what's pulling your trains on the main line. Because, yeah, 060s, 080s, you're going to be bouncing all over the place. But when you get them trailing wheels, you've got a much better stability. Your forward and rear trailing wheels, you've got a much better stability. And I can't explain it fully, but the 484 was just seems to have been the smoothest ride for a large-scale steam locomotive. Yep, yeah, we're regular guy. You are just a regular guy. Yes, as I was mentioned earlier. The additional trailing trucks allow for a larger firebox to be used. So the Northern Pacific are the ones that made this wheel configuration popular, and then everybody just aped the design of both locomotive builders and railroads. I have it written over here. I think ultimately 36 different railroads reportedly used a variant of the Northern steam locomotive. It was just that popular. They went by many different names. There was like one railroad called they called it the Confederation. Trying to figure over the top of my head. In this case, we're going to be talking about the Chesapeake and Ohio's variant of the Northern, which was called the Greenbrier. Are you confused yet? Don't worry. Northern 484 steam locomotive, very popular, used by 36 different railroads. The Chesapeake and Ohio, they called theirs the Greenbrier. Okay, back to this. Back to the stream. All right, so moving down the pipeline, if I can get back to my slideshow. StreamYards! I'm having a rough day with StreamYards. So, the Chesapeake and Ohio Railroad, they end up getting 12 of these Greenbriers constructed between 1935 and 1948, and they were constructed by the Lima Locomotive Works out of Ohio. And the last of these Greenbriers to be constructed, you guessed it, was number 614. And it also is reportedly the last commercially built steam locomotive in the United States intended for passenger use. There's a lot of these locomotives. I swear there's so many of them I do start doing research on. They're like, this is the last commercially built in the US. This is the last commercially built. Well, there was many different locomotive builders, so there were many different ones that wanted to have the claim. Like, I believe Chesapeake and Ohio 1309, which is now Western Maryland 1309, it has the distinction of being Baldwin's last commercial built steam locomotive. And that was 2 years before number 614 rolled off the floor. So number 614, it's joining a fleet making an even dozen of Greenbriers, and the Greenbriers brought great success for the Chesapeake and Ohio. Many people liked running them. Many people liked riding behind them. They were smooth to ride behind. They were powerful. The number 614, it's I can't speak. 470,000 pounds, and it has a tractive force. Do I have it written here? Yeah, it has a tractive effort of 68,000 pounds. Give you an idea, that's about 5,000 horsepower it's able to pull. However, it came in pretty late the game, and it only actually served in commercial operation for the Chesapeake and Ohio for 5 years. That was it. It did not serve long because dieselization of United States rail systems was well underway after the Second World War. And after a brief career of 5 years, number 614, as well as the rest of the Greenbriers, are laid up by the Chesapeake and Ohio. However, 614 was spared the scrapping torch. It's the only Greenbrier from the Chesapeake and Ohio to survive the age of all these locomotives being scrapped. And in the 1970s, it actually found its way to the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad Museum for preservation, since it was Lima's last commercial built steam locomotive for passenger use. It had some historical value to it, even though it served briefly. And it was around this point, things get very interesting in our story, because you'd be wondering, why are we talking about steam locomotives that only operate for 4 years? Oh, don't worry. Things get interesting. So it's around this point that a gentleman by the name of Ross Rowland Jr., a rail entrepreneur, he had been operating a series of excursions known as the American Freedom Train around the age of America's bicentennial, 1975, 1976, and then continued on that success with helping to operate the Chesapeake and Ohio, which was now being simply called the Chessie Systems Safety Express trains. Rail trains. They were going to get ready to do these. Essentially, what they were these Chessie System safety trains, and they would tour around the Chessie System lines, basically a publicity campaign to raise awareness of the do's and don'ts when you're at a railroad crossing, to educate the public on how the railroad can serve your community and also how you should respect railroad property. Initially, they were using Reading Railroad number 2101 to do these operations, do this Chessie System Safety Express, and it also done the American Freedom Train. Unfortunately, in 1979, the roundhouse in which 2101 was stationed in caught fire and burned. And Mr. Rowland was in desperate need of a replacement. So he ended up trading 2101 to the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad Museum in exchange to getting number 614. And since 614 really didn't have a stressful career, since it only been around for 5 years, and it spent more life as a museum piece or sit on the shelf than it did actually operate, they were hoping it'd be a speedy restoration. And indeed it was. In only about 18 months, they were able to restore 614 back to operating conditions in time to run the next wave of the Chessie System Safety Express. And they would run it throughout the early 1980s. Now, Mr. Rowland, he wasn't just involved in rail excursions. He was also involved in a program in a company, I should say, which was known as brain eyes my brain's not working, guys. It's the notes are right here. My brain's not working. My brain sometimes doesn't work. Yeah, I apologize about that. Eventually, what ended up happening was Mr. Rowland was involved in what was known as the American Coal Enterprises, ACE. And American Coal Enterprises' mission was to devise what they called the second generation of steam locomotives. They believed that people. Sorry, guys. Sorry that I'm not doing so well tonight. I've been kind of all over the place trying to get this stream together, getting stuff packed for a weekend outing, getting my finals wrapped in college. Brains all over the place. Maybe some more rum and root beer. So, what American Coal Enterprises, their interest was building the second generation of steam locomotives, because it was their opinion that steam locomotive technology had been not pushed to its utmost capabilities. The problem they felt, and a lot of historians do have argued this today, the problem with your final classes of steam locomotives you hear about during the Second World War and immediately after, they were so focused at trying to outdo the diesels that they weren't focused on actually fulfilling the full capacity of steam power, that they were more focused like, we just want to do what the diesels can do. Well, you can't do what the diesels can do. Try doing something different. Try to do show what steam can do in itself. There was also the fact that in the 1970s, the United States of America, as much as Western civilization, had suffered not one, but two oil crises, where the price of oil skyrocketed due to embargoes placed on Middle Eastern countries. And yeah, that led to not a good time in the United States of America, having to wait in line for gasoline. And that was definitely causing a problem for the American railroad industry, which had essentially imploded upon itself. The railroad infrastructure imploded upon itself in the 1960s when the Pennsylvania Railroad and New York Central merged. That imploded, caused one of the largest bankruptcies in recorded history, and most of the Eastern Seaboard's rail network was just in dire straits. throw the oil crisis on top of it, you're in for a sticky situation. So ACE, with Mr. Rowland's backing, they wanted to make a prototype of a brand new steam locomotive that would prove that steam power was actually more economically viable and was much more efficiently in terms of pulling power than diesels were. Initially, he had several partners involved with ACE, but as time went on, and there was an estimate that the prototype was going to cost like $1.25 million to construct. Not a lot of railroads wanted to actually gamble on this idea, so all these partners started pulling out one by one till late 1984. The chassis system was the only partner still left in ACE. So they can't build a prototype, but maybe they can bring public awareness to the ACE's objective. And since Mr. Rowland technically owned 614, they decided to rechristen it 614T, and that this was going to be their prototype for the ACE. Okay, it wasn't really the prototype. What they were trying to do, they want to do a series of public excursions that was going to actually put number 614 into some form of freight service on the chassis system, and really with scientific measurements try to prove to the world that look what we could, look how much more affordable it was, how more efficient it was for us to pull this coal train through the heart of West Virginia with this old steam locomotive. Imagine what we could do with a new one. So ACE 3000 was launched in January of 1985. This train being helmed by number 614T. Not 614. Totally different. So this is actually a mock-up of one of those proposed prototype second-gen steam locomotives that ACE was developing. And here you can see number 614T in operation during the ACE 3000 program, pulling a coal, I believe this was a revenue coal freight as well. I mean, I think it was a genuine coal train they were pulling. It was also around this time that 614T has the distinction of being the only steam locomotive to be leased to pull an Amtrak train. It pulled a segment of Amtrak's Cardinal service as this train was going through West Virginia. So it was a very interesting time to be a rail fan, 1985, because here's a steam locomotive pulling a coal train on the main line for the heart of West Virginia. Like, this isn't a photo shoot. This is the real deal happening. Now, at the end of these excursions, Mr. Rowland claimed that these excursions had proved that 614 had used less fuel than what a diesel locomotive would have used. However, if whatever stats he was using to prove that, to my knowledge, was not actually disseminated. So it's kind of hard. You're kind of taking what Mr. Rowland and ACE were saying at face value. So ACE claimed this proves that a steam locomotive would be able to be more efficient in pulling these larger loads in the late 20th century than diesel locomotives, especially with the cost of oil. But the oil crisis was several years old at this point. Prices had rebounded. Didn't seem like anything like was going to happen in the near future. And the chassis system lost interest in investing in ACE's prototype. And with that went any real chance of a return of steam locomotives to mainline use, at least in terms of freight use and passenger use in the late 20th century. But it's a very important event, nevertheless. It's a novelty in American railroad history of what could have been. And 614T was at the center of it. Now, even though it wasn't able to bring steam locomotives back to mainline use in terms of regular freight use, it would still see 614 will still be used in a number of very publicized excursions throughout the late 80s and through the 1990s. Predominantly, these excursions were no longer current on chassis system lines because the chassis system had merged with the Seabourn line and it becomes CSX Transportation, which of course is still around today. And CSX Transportation really had no interest in getting their hands dirty with a steam locomotive. And I should also mention with the people that have had a counter argument against the ACE 3000 project, while it was a cool thing to see, and maybe it was efficient in terms of fuel use and in terms of pulling power, there was the fact of maintenance of a steam locomotive. The maintenance of a steam locomotive is going to skyrocket in cost over any diesel electric locomotive. That's its big weakness. So a lot of these excursions weren't actually happening in West Virginia anymore. They were happening up in New York and New Jersey on New Jersey transit lines. Very popular. I actually briefly mentioned 614 in last week's video about the 6-pack of Chinese steam in America. There was a doubleheader with C&O 614 and Susquehanna 142 in the 1990s. So 614 gained a lot of popularity around this period of time. This is actually a postcard that was released of 614 during one of its New York, New Jersey excursions. It became an icon of American steam locomotives, as most Greenbrier, and by Greenbrier I mean all northern steam locomotives did at this point. The 484 was just, like I said, it was the ultimate wheel arrangement. A smooth ride, a powerful ride. The 484 was. However, at the end of 1999, the fire went cold in 614's firebox. Mr. Rowland wasn't really able to find any new lines to operate on. Railroads were becoming more tighter, I shouldn't say tighter. Railroads were modernized in how they were functioning, and the new methods that had a mainline railroad function did not accommodate for a massive steam locomotive. So it was harder and harder by the turn of the 21st century to find a large railroad to operate 614 on. Mr. Rowland looked for a possible person to sell the locomotive to. I really didn't find any buyers. Nobody wanted to take up the expensive cost of maintaining such a locomotive. And I think at this point too, if anybody wanted to return 614 operation, it was at this point you would have to have had the FRA 1472 inspection. So yeah, 614 was kind of in limbo in the early 21st century. Eventually we get another interesting wrinkle to its story. There were talks of, from all people, then coal mogul and now governor of West Virginia, and I believe he's now going to be a senator, Jim Justice. He made his wealth off of the coal industry and also made his wealth off of the entertainment industry. And Jim Justice owned a massive resort, the Greenbrier Resort, which is partly where the Greenbrier name for this locomotive came from, the Greenbrier River. And he kind of wanted to have hold on one moment. He essentially wanted a way to have all the folks that were going to stay at his Greenbrier Resort have a direct commute between Washington, D.C., which of course is all the people that can afford to go to Greenbrier Resort, to the Greenbrier Resort itself in White Sulphur Springs, West Virginia. So he wanted to come up with his own private passenger line, essentially, that was going to run from Washington, D.C. up to the Greenbrier Resorts. I didn't write it down, but I mean, the cost was, it was very expensive. The proposed cost was to get a ticket on what he called the Greenbrier Presidential Express is what it was going to be called. And there was interest in using number 614 to helm at least part of this excursion route. Now, I don't know how that was going to work. I don't see CSX in 2011 allowing a steam locomotive to lead a regular commercial passenger route to and from a resort. I don't see that happening. I guess maybe they were going to do diesels part of the way, and then when they got close to the resort, when they were on short lines, then 614 would pull in the rest of the way. But then that kind of complicates the whole excursion. I don't see how Amtrak was going to agree to this. I don't see how anybody was going to agree to this. So this was a novel idea, and they actually painted up 614, which was resting in Clifton Forge, Virginia, dressed it up in a proposed paint scheme, had photo ops done of it and everything. And then the Greenbrier Presidential Express went nowhere. Never happened. Jim Justice went into politics, became governor, became senator, all that stuff happened. And as for number 614, well, it sat at Clifton Forge, Virginia. To be fair, in the care of some great people at the Chesapeake and Ohio Historical Society. However, it was still tenantly owned by Mr. Rowland, who was still looking for a way to get 614 back in operation. But for over a decade, this is where it's sat as the centerpiece of this outdoor collection of rolling stock from the Chesapeake and Ohio, which seemed like a nice quiet end for a steam locomotive that really didn't seem it was going to have much of a life. It only served 5 years for the Chesapeake and Ohio in its initial service before the end of steam on the Chesapeake and Ohio. So that's something to keep in mind. So if this is where the story would have ended, I think it's like, wish it would have done more, but, cool paint scheme it gets to live out in. Of course, things changed just last week. And I love this image here. They have like a small model railroad around the Chesapeake and Ohio Historical Society's property. That is not actually a miniature 614. I believe that's a miniature 1309. That is a that has multiple cylinders on it. So that's not 614, but cool nevertheless. So what has ended up happening is just last week, a group known as RGD America LLC have announced that they have taken ownership of CNO 614 from Mr. Rowland, and they are intending to restore it to operation conditions via the Stroudsburg Railroad Mechanical Services. And of course, if you know a thing or two about steam locomotives in the United States in the 21st century, they tend to have to go through it's 1604. Okay, so it's an alligating class 1604. Thank you very much. Oh, animals, vehicles, and more. I would have loved it if a brand new steam locomotive were built in the modern day. My ideal modern day steam locomotive would resemble a diesel locomotive, but with all steam engine features. So, yes, so the mock-up that ACE 3000 was, well, not the 614 running, but the bread mock-up. Do I have that right? Yeah, I have it earlier. There we are. Look at it. Trying to look stuff up here over the siding. Having to organize things behind the scenes. Not fun. All right, back to here. So yes, not having fun with StreamYards tonight. Not having fun, guys. So if you know a thing or two about operating a steam locomotive in the 21st century, especially in the United States, there ain't too many places you can go to get a steam locomotive reconstructed. More often than not, if you're east of the Mississippi River and you want to restore a steam locomotive, it's going to go through Stroudsburg. So very much looking forward to that. Was not expecting this to happen. I didn't think it was possible that 614 was going to get restoration. So the good news is there are new owners of this locomotive that have a desire to return this back to operating condition. I do question where they're going to run this. Now we know with number 611, the J class of the Norfolk and Western, which the J class is also technically a spinoff of the Northern class. So they have the same wheel configuration. The 611 had some glorious runnings on the Stroudsburg Railroad. There was a period of time that it had to go under for some maintenance, and really there was nowhere else to run it. So I guess maybe that's a possibility. Seems like we're going to end up having if this works out, that 614 will, in a couple years from now, be doing shakedown runs on the Stroudsburg Railroad, which will be glorious to see. But where is it going to run if it's going to run on a larger scale line? Because CSX has, kind of been known not to be very fond of running steam locomotives. But then you got the Kentucky Steam Heritage Corporation, which, they acquired this whole chunk of property from CSX, and CSX actually gave them a few pieces of equipment. So I don't know if there's a change of heart going on here. I don't know what's going to happen. The good news is CNO 614, there is desires to restore it, and there's already plans in motion. I've already seen photographs coming out of the Chesapeake and Ohio Historical Society of the new owners inspecting and getting the locomotive prepped for movement from Virginia to Pennsylvania. But I do wonder where they're going to run this. But that's the story of CNO 614. Warts and all from here at Readout Productions, me struggling with terminology. I didn't hear anything about 611 breaking rail. I didn't hear anything about that. I mean, they're going to have to eventually run it. If it's going to get restored at Strasbourg, I would just presume that they would just do the shakedown runs through Strasbourg as well. And if you want to get a more coherent account of the story of 614, it's been a little while, but I do have the notes. I have notes. It's been a little while since I've done notes for our live streams. I just haven't had time to sit down and pick a subject to research for one of tonight's streams. But I did tonight. And later on, once we're done streaming, if you are a member of the Garrison, our membership program, which can be accessed through Ko-fi, links in the description below, you will get access to the notes for tonight's research on CNO 614. So I'm gonna try to get, once I'm done with this semester, I'm gonna try to get back to getting into the note taking, because that's one of the things I promised my members of the Garrison for their support here on the channel. But can, you know, this is Virginia, and then this is Pennsylvania, and, you know, Kentucky's very, very separate, very far away. So I and also, like, I keep hearing announcements. It's like every other year. It's like Kentucky. Yeah, the Kentucky Heritage Steam Corporation, they're acquiring a new piece. That's great. Let's get the visas you initially acquired restored. And I know it takes time. I'm not saying they're not doing their due diligence to get work done on their existing collection, but it's like the same thing, like a smaller short line, like the Colebrookdale Railroad. I think the Colebrookdale Railroad, do they have like 2, if not 3 steam locomotives technically in their possession right now? And it's like, that's great. Let's get one running first. Let's get one running first, and then we will acquire to the collection. But I'm wondering, maybe they're planning, maybe they want so much of a collection, they want to acquire so much so they can basically take parts. You know, if something's broken, like, well, we have that sitting over there, we have no time to restore it, so we're going to take parts from there to combine all the parts from multiple locomotives into one again at running. Number 2008, the mystery one on my video last week. I like, everybody was giving me little tidbits in the comment section, but genuinely, I'm like, it's a QJ locomotive. Came here in 2008 for RJ Gorman, and it ran until 2013. And I didn't mention in the video, and I was aware of it, but people in the comments had made it clear that they stopped running it because RJ Gorman, the man named after the railroad named after the man, he passed away, and management just really didn't know what to do with the locomotive. And thankfully, the Kentucky Steam Heritage Corporation acquired it. I just find number 2008 an oddball steam locomotive. It's like, it's there. It don't really got much history to it. I mean, it got the history. Yeah, it came from China, and RJ Gorman owned it. That's what I'm going to presume. Nothing's been announced, which is probably for reasons that there's probably legal reasons and reasons for the best why it's not been announced yet. I know, like, the T1 Trust, they've said they've had many offers to operate 5550 when they get it running, and more so than bigger ones than you would expect. I'm going to presume 614 going to be converted to oil? I think it burned coal it burned coal through its excursion services. I got to be straight up front. This is a day's worth of research I did for 614. While I'm familiar with it from my childhood, watching videos of it, a lot of his stuff, you know, I kind of go through the articles, take the notes down, try to put into a coherent narrative, and then get completely eviscerated by the chat, which I thank you for. It helps me become more knowledgeable. But I think 614 is still presently a coal burner. And if it's going to run mainline, it has to become oil burning. All right. Well, while we're here talking, I do want to shout out, since we've been talking about 614, I talked about the Chesapeake and Ohio Historical Society. I feel we gotta we got to talk about the Chesapeake. We got to give them some recognition because they were the curators of this locomotive for a decade. And Fu Man Blue, regular follower of the channel, thank you for tuning in tonight. Let's see if I can share the screen properly. StreamYards has been giving me a problem, so here we are at their website for the Chesapeake and Ohio Historical Society, a non-for-profit corporation dedicated to interpreting the American railway experience using C&O's history through drawings, documents, and artifacts which the society collects, preserves, and makes available to as broad an audience as possible. The society was organized in January of 1969 with the first publication of a monthly newsletter, and in 1975 was incorporated as a non-profit. Why do you have to throw such hard words at me? Eleemosynary organization within the meaning or subparagraph. Ouch. Why throw hard words at me this late at night? They got a couple actual different facilities, but the main one's in Clifton Ridge. The C&O Railway Heritage Center, which is open Tuesday through Sundays, 10 to 4. This center is a railway heritage museum, interpretive, educational, and visitor center that tells the story of the C&O Railway, the people, the places, and the technology. The story is the essential American tale of how our nation grew and how we lived and worked and how we were all connected together by twin rails of steel. The purpose of the center is also to honor the memory and contribution of all the railroaders who built the railroads that allowed our nation to prosper and all those railroaders who continue to keep America moving by rail. Clifton Forge, the heart of the C&O. Though a small town, was an important place on the railroad. It is where locomotives were serviced and readied for the trip west over the Allegheny Mountains and east over the Blue Ridge Mountains and down the James River. There was a large shop facility for the overhaul and repair of locomotives. There was a large rail yard for classifying coal and other freight, a yard for less than carload freight, and icing facility. Ooh, an icing facility. I mean, it's pretty cold here now, but I mean, I'd go see a historic. I don't want to live in an icing facility, which is Western Pennsylvania when we go from fall to winter, but I will go see a historic railroad icing facility. Yes, thank you very much. The main laundry facility for the railroad, a passenger coach yard, and the division headquarters for the region. It was all the things that can comprise a railroad, crowded into a small crescent of land next to the Jackson River, and an archetypal example of the American railroad. Speak, readout, speak. The center is also dedicated to preserving and telling the story of Clifton Ridge. Oh, look, we got a video. We can click on the video. Oh, hold on. Yep. I think it's going to play the audio. Hopefully it's going to play the audio and it won't be awkward when I go quiet. It's not sharing. Oh, dear Lord. Okay, how about now? Does it play now? Okay, it's playing now, I think. So this is the highlight reel from the C&O Railway Historical Society's YouTube channel. And I'll give that a like. I'm not subscribed to them yet, so I will go ahead and do that. This has been a museum is on my bucket list to visit. I wasn't anticipating 614 getting restored. It's just a beautiful location. I mean, Altoona is a large community nestled between mountains, but this seems like to be a much smaller village nestled in towering mountains. You can also see the model track they got run around the property that we saw the image from earlier. Four, 8, 4. See, I got the numbers right that time. All right. So that's just a bit of a highlight reel of the C&O Railway Historical Society's facilities in Clifton Forge, Virginia. I do not know. I'm gonna assume they were in talks. Even though Roland is who technically owned the steam locomotive, it did not become property of the Historical Society. I couldn't find really a description of how the relationship was between Roland and the Historical Society. I'm assuming he loaned it or had like a lease with it. He's like, here, can I loan it to you? I'm assuming it was loaned like you would loan an artifact to a museum until he could find what he was going to do with it. So they wouldn't have had any real involvement with the transfer of ownership, but I'm going to assume they also were involved hey, we have this idea that we want to restore it. Like maybe it's going to, once it's restored, it'll return to the Historical Society. Maybe this will become its home. Who knows? But at this time, this is still a relatively new story that's come out. I think, what was it, Friday last week? Maybe even earlier than that. Maybe it was Wednesday it was only about a week ago this story broke on like a whole website. I could even take you over to the new website. Yeah, let me do that. I'll take you over to the new website, CNO 14. And this is a website still being put together. Welcome to the official website of the Chesapeake and Ohio 614. And of course, you go to the first thing here, which is the press release, which kind of reiterates what I was saying earlier about RJD, American LLC, have acquired the Chesapeake and Ohio number 614 from Freedom Train Foundations, Inc. That's the company of Mr. Roland. With firm commitment to preserving railroad heritage, RJD America LLC will invest substantial resources to restore the locomotive and auxiliary tender at the esteemed Strasburg Railroad Mechanical Services. A bit of a history there. We'll go over to RJD America, which also seems to be like a brand new page. It's been put together, so there's not a whole lot of information other than what these new websites are telling us. I mean, so new that if you're coming over to the store's not even up and running. But believe me, when we get 614 merch, I will very likely acquire it, depending on funds, of course. But, so very much acquire it. So this is brand new development is what I'm trying to say. This site is still being built. I will actually drop you the link to co614.com so you can subscribe to their email list so you can be the first notified on updates relating to the restoration of 614. And I also want to give you the link to the Chesapeake and Ohio Historical Society. I cannot speak. I am sorry. U.S. Army 88U says, what's crazy is CNO 2700 class is mostly saved except a few, kind of like the Reading T1, so they could probably get one of those. How many are, that's a good question. Let's go dive in. CNO 2700. Let's see how many of them are preserved. We'll go to steamlocomotive.com. I'm pretty tired. I'm like, I'm just going to go there. And let's see here. We got 2700, which was restored in 2017. And I think it's at, where's she at? She's at the Denison Depot Museum. Oh, that's not actually far from me. I've also wanted to go there. Ooh, yeah, I see. She looked a bit rough for a little while. I don't think you can see what I'm going through. I'm going through images. Yeah, so 2,700. First of all, maybe read out. Maybe you should share this instead. Okay, yeah. So you see what I'm rambled on about. So this is from steamlocomotive.com. So we're talking about the 2,700 class of the Chesapeake and Ohio, which were 284 Berkshire locomotives, not to be confused with what we've been talking about all night, the 484s. We had 2,700, which this is what it currently looks like. It's cosmetically restored at the Denison Depot Museum, which is out in Ohio. And I've also had the Denison Railroad Depot on my bucket list. Would love to get the chance to go out there. 2,701. Oh, that didn't end well. So it was put on display in Buffalo, and then all the glass was broken. Everything that could be removed was removed, and it had to be scrapped. Well, that sucks. 2,705 is at the B&O Railroad Museum. $2,707 is at the Illinois Railroad Museum. Doesn't look in the best conditions. 2,716, Kentucky Railway Museum. 2,727, and of course 2,716, if I'm not mistaken. That's what the Kentucky Steam Heritage Corporation, they're working on. 2,732 is at the Science Museum of Virginia. Science, of course. Science. Don't you know anything about science? 2,736 at the National Railroad Museum. What is that up? We're up to now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 2,755, Chief Logan State Park. 6, 7. Huntington Park is where 2,756 is preserved. 7. Just keeps going. 2,776 is in Washington Courthouse, Ohio. Even though it was never a C&O town, because it's probably what they could get their hands on. 2,789. Okay, yeah, so we had approximately no more than 10 of the Berkshires are preserved. That's still a lot for a class of locomotive, of a type of locomotive. And we have RH Snow. Yeah, we're on Eastern time. You on that you on that Texas time. I'm about ready to fall asleep over here, and you're just getting ready to sit down for dinner, I presume. But thank you for joining in, RH Snow. It's been a while to have you in our chat. We're glad to have you here. So, yeah, Berkshires were the Berkshire locomotives for the Chesapeake and Ohio, far more privileged in terms of preservation than what the Greenbrier were. Only one of the dozen, and the one was the 614 we've been talking about tonight. Stay awake. It's 8:30, and then it'll be 9. And I got a 3-hour car drive tomorrow. I'm gonna crash after that. No, I'm not gonna crash the car. No, I'm gonna crash in the bed in the hotel once I get to my destination safely. And Wrangler, join us in. Thank you for joining us in tonight. And for people to join in now, just a heads up, what we've been talking about tonight, and you can catch on the replay in the future, we've been talking about Chesapeake and Ohio number 614. It is a 484, a Greenbrier locomotive that was only operated for 5 years by the Chesapeake and Ohio Railroad. However, it went on to have a very colorful life in excursion service throughout the 1980s and 90s in the United States of America. And was just announced last week. It is going to be restored back to operating condition. One of many positive stories that have come out of the steam preservation community in 2024, because we've also have New York Central 3001 been announced. It's going to be restored back to operation. Strides been made with getting the T1 Pennsylvania Railroad number 5550. Great strides get that constructed. It's obviously not finished yet, but great strides in its construction. Pennsylvania Railroad 1361, great strides being made at Altoona to get one of the last of the 2 K4 locomotives back in operation. SMS lines number 9. It was supposed to have passenger excursions in southern New Jersey this past weekend, but due to the drought that the mid-Atlantic of the United States is suffering, I kind of was pushed back to simply display. I think it was under power and ran back and forth in the shops, but they couldn't actually run it out on their main line of track. That's the Woodstown Central that have the number 9. So fingers crossed it'll be pulling Christmas trains this year. That'd be nice. Also, of course, the East Broad Top Railroad, they got number 16 back up and running after it had been down for repairs all summer. So very much looking forward to that. Potential Christmas video of retracing history, East Broad Top, Christmas in coal country. Love to see that. An Allegheny would be cool. It's probably not going to happen because of the nightmare it was to get the similar class that 1309. I know 1309 is not technically an Allegheny, but it's a very similar type of locomotive. And the nightmare that the Western Maryland suffered getting that restored and are still suffering to get the new parts for. I don't think an Allegheny is going to run. R.H. Snow, being the darling that she is, these massive babies are so amazing. I would love to see one fly by me on the tracks. I thought for a moment you said that you wanted to fly, and I was a little confused that we were talking about different forms of transportation there for a moment. If a steam locomotive starts to fly, run. It's going to crash terribly into the valley below. Not good. We don't want things crashing into the valley below. Never good. Never good. All right. I'm trying to poke around here, see what other stuff. Oh, I forgot to show you guys. We do have some footage from the Chesapeake and Ohio Railway Historical Society. If you want to see when 614 was 614T, and attempting to prove that steam power was economically superior and just in raw energy superior to diesel electric back in 1985. If I can go over here, we'll just play that. So yeah, this is all credit to the CNO Railway Historical Society. This is the ACE 3000 excursions that CNO number 614T operated in January 1985. Oh, no, you don't want to see that part. You want to see it highball and not my link. Remember, 614 and the Greenbriers, they were built for power and speed and a smooth ride all in the same time. Most of its excursions, when it would pull passengers in the 90s, it was pretty common that it would hit 70 miles per hour during the excursions. Not something you'll see today on your steam excursions on your short lines today. Then it's an auxiliary tender here. It's actually for the Safety Express.
I guess he's ready to go. Yeah, let's get on.
That may not be an auxiliary. That may be actually an auxiliary electrical car. Technical term, not in my brain at the moment. I apologize. Well, if all goes well, you're going to get to hear that sound again in a few years. If you want to watch this full video that was captured of the ACE 3000 excursions with CNO number 614 operating January 1985, you can go to the link here in the chat, and I'll take you to the full video, which provided by the Chesapeake and Ohio Railway Historical Society. But with that, we are going to call tonight's stream to a conclusion. Thank you guys for tuning in. Hope you've had a great time. I'm very excited about the future of CNO number 614. And we have USA Army 88U saying, there's a saying that goes, you can't stop a steam locomotive once it gets going and you can haul the world. Yeah, they don't come to a sudden stop. Once you get it going, the only thing you can really do is tame the beast until you get to your destination. If you guys enjoyed tonight's stream, be sure to hit the like button down below. And if this is the first time coming to Redoubt Productions, well, welcome. If you want to follow us in our future adventures, be it when you're notified when we go live, which is usually Thursdays at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and when we usually post videos on Saturdays, be sure to subscribe here to Redoubt Productions, because when you subscribe to Redoubt Productions, you help grow our community, and you let the YouTube know that you do want to use YouTube for historical education, or as I like to call it, edumerication, because we tend to talk about American history, usually military and industrial history like railroads and stuff. So if you've enjoyed this, consider subscribing here to Redoubt Productions. And if you want to support us on our travels, if you want to join us, essentially join our Garrison of Historical Preservation, you can do that by going to the Ko-fi page. Link is in the description below. You can, well, we call our membership program the Garrison for a reason. And by joining the Garrison for a small monthly fee, you do get access to select scripts, include the notes to tonight's stream. So if you want the coherent account of CNO 614's legacy, you're going to get access to that just in a few moments. And you'll get access to some behind-the-scenes footage. You'll get access to behind-the-scenes photographs. There's all sorts of stuff. And I'm trying to build more things up as bonuses for joining the Garrison. So thank you all for tuning in tonight. We will see you next week, hopefully, if I have time available, here on Uncut History. Good night, everybody.
Shouting the battle cry of freedom, and we'll come from the ranks with a million free more. Shouting the battle cry of freedom. The union forever, hurrah, boys, hurrah. Down with the traitors, up with the stars. We will really from the flag, boys, and really once again. Shouting the battle cry of freedom. We will welcome to the numbers, to the lyre, true and brave.